Good evening, everyone. Welcome to another episode of A Little Perspective Season 2, where we feature guests from all marginalized backgrounds and lift them up to raise awareness and educate our community. I am here with my amazing and lovely co-host, Ange, and as we are excited to share another story from another lovely guest tonight, and I will turn it over to Ange to introduce her. Take it away.
Hello, Samyuktha. Thank you so much. We are always excited to have our guests come on. This guest actually had me on her show first, so I'm actually excited to be able to return the favor. Laurie has a really incredible perspective on life. She truly lives with an attitude of gratitude, no matter the circumstances, and she has had many a reason to not, but continues to choose to do so. And I love having her on my Facebook feed and being a friend of mine. Laurie, why don't you tell us just a little bit about yourself, please?
Thank you, Angela. I'm really excited to be here. A little bit about me. I am a mom of 3. I love being a mom. I really love as well changing the cycle, as I am a PTSD and child abuse survivor. And so a big mission for me has been to, as I'm healing and moving forward in my own life, changing the cycle, to give my own 3 children a different perspective and a different possibility within their own life as well. I am an author as well as a host of the Enlightenment show. Creativity is a big part of my own journey, where I started writing to try to find my own voice through the trauma, and being able to gain awareness that I was indeed going through trauma. So it was a way for me to own my voice and find my power. And I help other teens and kids as well in creative writing courses to be able to find their voice through writing and creativity as well.
Yeah, that's one of the many things that we have in common, is we are both also writers. I have not delved into the fiction world just yet. Samyuktha and I both, though, have been a part of an anthology, and really have found the power that comes with telling your story, or just simply writing, how therapeutic it can be, and how exciting it is to be able to hold your work in your hands. So that is truly one of the many things that we have in common. Why don't we start with that? Just tell us a little bit about how you started writing. Have you always been a writer, or did you just pick it up as an adult?
I started writing when I was 12 and 13 with journaling. My journal was like my best friend, where it was a space where I could write everything and it felt safe and okay. And it got me through some of the hardest times growing up in my life, was sitting with my journal. And so I continued on journal writing, moved into songwriting and poetry when I was in my teenage years, as well as I did the newspaper staff because I wanted to be a journalist and I love Nancy Drew. So that part of me was like, the journalist is the Nancy Drew mystery reporter part of me. The book, I did not plan on setting out to write a book at the beginning. I just had something that I needed to share and write about. It began being my own journey of when I had 2 baby girls. I had really bad postpartum depression after my second baby, which really amplified PTSD and anxiety in me in a way that I did not understand, but it was very much affecting my day-to-day life. And as I started diving into that emotion and trying to investigate and figure out why I was feeling those things, what was going on, why were these feelings coming up at this time in my life, a story kind of started creating with a new character. And I went on this journey with this new character. And as I was writing the novel, I was also doing a lot of my own healing work from the very beginning of my childhood, going through my teenage years, through my adulthood, and really being very honest with myself about some hard topics that felt safe putting in a perspective of a different character. Because it was kind of like going outside of myself, disassociating maybe a little bit because it was so raw and vulnerable. And it just amplified into something more than what I had planned. But it was a really beautiful healing journey of 12 years of really honestly therapy with myself, writing out hard truths and being honest with myself so I could continue to move forward in my healing journey.
Do you mind talking about that story specifically and that character and just like give maybe a synopsis if you're comfortable?
Yeah. The book that I wrote is Little Owl. It's a psychological thriller, and it's about a mother who has PTSD and anxiety, who's trying to create stability and certainty within her family and home, but she's struggling to do that because of her upbringing and the childhood trauma that she's feeling during this time. So when her two daughters go missing from her front yard, she can't believe that this is her reality. And it sets her off on a search to figure out what happened to her daughters and also realize how she's a part of it all.
That's wow, that's such a beautiful story. What's the title of it?
It's called Little Owl.
Little Owl. Could you talk about the mentioning in your bio that you also have your own show? Would you mind talking a little bit about that?
Yes. I had an idea 2019, it was in November, how much I've appreciated when I have connected with people on other shows or heard about their story or started realizing who I was through writing my own story, how powerful it is that the more we share our stories with one another, the more not only can we connect to each other, but also help other people understand that they're not alone. And I really, really love the essence of that human connection. And so I had an idea just for fun. Again, probably the journalist reporter part in me was like, I should just do my own show and we'll just chat and get to know each other. And I'll ask questions and we'll just talk over tea. And it started as just this fun, like whimsical, let's see what happens. And after 5 months of doing the show, I fell in love with the people and the conversations and the show every day. I love show days. I'm like, yes, we get to like meet another amazing person. And so it's just continued forward from that point. There's been a few pauses in between with voice recovery, but other than that, I have really looked forward to showing up every single week to getting to know someone else and they're hearing their story as well.
You do such a great job with that show.
Thank you.
It was so fun to be on it. I was nervous because I hadn't done many shows with people that I didn't know, and so, but you made it so fun and it made me look forward to other opportunities that I had afterwards. But you did mention that there were pauses because of voice recovery. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that journey? Because man, that is a unique experience, and one that I am sure taught you quite a number of life lessons along the way.
Yes, so in 2020, it was about March, my throat just started hurting. It felt kind of just like a sore throat. I thought I had allergies at first, kind of dry, having a hard time swallowing. But again, for a little bit, I thought it was just a cold or allergies or something like that. And then I started noticing that my voice was changing octaves, like it was going significantly lower. Like I could not speak like I'm speaking right now. And it felt all the time like there was just something stuck in my throat, like I couldn't breathe or get like the airflow in my throat to function in the way that I'm used to just naturally doing. So we went in to the voice specialist to get some things checked out. They ran all the testing and found that I had a mass on my throat that was right on my vocal cords. And so because of that, every time my vocal cord would push to kind of, to speak, because it's a muscle, or to even swallow, or to do airflow, it was literally crushing my vocal cords, kind of like an elastic band. It was just pulling so tight that it was getting really, really exhausted, and it was damaging my vocal cords even more than what it already was doing. And so I was advised at that point to completely go on, it's called a GERD diet, which is basically an inflammatory diet where you do no high fat foods, you have no seasoning. It was a complete lifestyle change in the food department that it was supposed to help with the inflammation, was the hope that we could get the mass to decrease. So they put me on that, put me on some medication and some vocal therapy at first to see if we could just get it to go down. So I continued to do that. I completely lost my voice 2 months after. I could not speak at all. Still stayed on the diet. It's interesting because changing my food also was like kind of devastating for me, because we're so used to like a specific, it's a whole experience, like the smell and the taste, and there's all these sensory details. And I'm a foodsie, like I love food. It's like, and I love talking over food. And so I'm like, okay, I can't talk and I can't eat food. And so I felt like a big part of myself was completely gone. I couldn't do singing with my voice. I teach, I speak, I have my show. I couldn't do any of those things without my voice. And so I felt like I was having this complete identity crisis of, I don't know who I am anymore. And that part surprised me probably the most, because I'd been working on myself for 6 years in therapy, doing a lot of personal healing. And that was the thought of like, who am I? I don't have any value without my voice. And so it gave me an opportunity. It was really hard. It was very traumatic for me to lose my voice. I had a few months where I was in a very deep, dark depression. Very much isolated myself, and it was easy to isolate myself because no one could hear me anyway. It was a struggle talking to my kids, trying to figure out how to communicate to my kids, and they were frustrated and I was frustrated, trying to find this new way of how do I speak to my kids in a way that used to be so comfortable, so that they understand me, so that we can still have that sense of connection. And so I had lost my voice all in all for 14 months. It came back during that time for about 2 months, and then I lost it again. So that time, it was very interesting, really painful, very hard, but I also learned a lot of very interesting things about myself and about communication and about self-worth and love, and about how my voice is more than just my vocal cords, which I did not understand that concept at all until I went through this, and it changed my perspective completely. So
yeah, that's really key, right? Is that we have so many different platforms and ways that we can share our messages, but sometimes we feel like we have to be louder than everybody else, whether it's literally or figuratively. And our voice video is king right now. I mean, you can see that just simply on social media, and taking that aspect out of it, it still applies that someone who's able to speak is going to be heard quicker than someone who can't. And so it's a lesson for you, in so many ways, but I imagine it was also some lessons for your kids. And you and I parent similarly in some ways that I've seen from the way that you've shared. And so I'm sure that you've had some of those conversations. So what was your kids' take on that experience?
Mm-hmm. They were fantastic. I will tell you, I think it was harder on me because I had to lean into my children more to speak for me. And that was like my own ego learning to like lower down, like it's okay for your kids to support you too in this situation. And it was actually really good for them to be able to step up in different ways that were needed and were important as well. So we had we would go around the house and do a lot of sticky notes for the first little while, or write little love notes. I would point to things to them all the time when we first started. And then I began starting sign language. The cutest thing was that all three of my kids would go on YouTube on their own free time, and they would go do sign language, trying to figure out what I was doing because they were watching me and they could see that I was really hurting and I was struggling. And they noticed that and they picked that up and wanted to communicate with me. And so they went on their own time to figure out how to do sign language so that we could talk to one another. And that was one of the most sentimental, like beautiful things, to watch my kids spend time adapting and communicating in that different form. They would order a lot of things for me, which was perfect. You know, like menu things, like ordering off the menu, you don't think about it. Like we drive up to McDonald's and I'd go to open my mouth and then remember, like, I can't order. And so then I'd look at my oldest and say, hey, you know, kind of give her the wink. She's like, I got you, mama, I got you. And then she'd go around the car and be like, all right, everyone, what do we want? You know, she'd like tally all the orders and do the ordering for us. But it really helped us to be able to be more present. Like when I would talk, we really learned, like I would do this finger thing, like nose to nose, and I'd come to them and they'd come to me, and we'd be much more present looking at each other so they could read my mouth, they could read my body language, they could really focus on sign language. So I felt like, as well as communication, being present, being in stillness and communicating in different forms really grew our relationship and built it all together as a team. So
that is amazing. That's amazing to hear. And do you mind me asking, are your kids at a younger age? Like, are they older?
They're older. My oldest is 15. I have a 13-year-old and an 11-year-old.
Okay, so they're still very young, and like just like even like teenage years, in 2020, and just to see you, like your kids band together and just be like, okay, mom is struggling, we're in this together, and to take that initiative and learn for themselves and see how you all can get through it together. That is just very that's wonderful. That's really wonderful to hear. Do you mind sharing a little bit about what were the other ways that you pushed yourself through the pain? Like, how did you manage? Like, what other ways did you resort to getting through, the hard time? Because it's 14 months, it's really long, and that is, yeah. So, do you mind sharing that?
I would love to. So we got a piano probably a month before I lost my voice, which is very interesting because I used to write songs when I was younger. I was a singer-songwriter, and I had a whole notebook of songs. And when I was 15, I gave up on my dream of being a singer-songwriter because of some of the upbringing trauma that had come up. I just had given up on myself. And so a month before I lost my voice, there was a piano up for grabs of someone, just come and grab the piano if you want it, we're moving. And my husband was like, do you want it? I'm like, yes, I want this piano. So we brought it home, made a nice spot for it, and it was perfectly timed for I came back to my first love. I mourned, I cried at the piano, I wrote, I really talked about everything that was hurting me. And I spoke through my fingers, and I spoke through my heart, and I spoke through the music. And that's where I felt like I was heard and I was being one with the piano. So I would say the piano was really the thing that got me through that, and writing through those 14 months of some of the darkest points that I've had, the loss, the hurt, the struggle of, I remember one point too, when I got my voice back, I was so excited. I was like, okay, it's back. And then a week later, it left again. And I was like, okay, apparently I'm not done learning here what I need to learn. And there's more that apparently I need to understand in the space of love and communication and voice. And so the piano was just, it's been an anchor, still is an anchor for me. And I came back to my first love, which I never thought that I would do. So it was very interestingly timed how all of that just came together when I needed it the most.
Yeah, that's amazing. That gave me goosebumps. I love that. So you said it's still an anchor. So have you really kind of continued on with the singing, songwriting portion of your first love?
I have.
Oh,
Yes.
wonderful, wonderful. How long, so it obviously took a while to get used to not having a voice. I mean, when the electricity goes off, I still walk around the house flipping on a switch, not even, thinking about it. Cause like, I know the electricity's off, but I'm like, oh, well, I guess I'll go watch TV. Well, no, dummy, you're not going to watch TV because the electricity's out, you just don't think about it. And then, but how was it when it came back for good? Were you nervous to use it? Were did it take a while to remember that you could use it?
Mhm. Yes, it's interesting, all the above. I was extremely nervous for the first little while when it came back. Like, I asked my voice specialist, I'm like, okay, we really need to talk about this, because I was having some anxiety around it of, what do? I don't want to hurt my voice. Like, what's too much? Like, what's not enough? Because jumping back into all of a sudden having a voice when you've lost it for so long, the last thing I want to do was to hurt it in a way that would make it so that we didn't have that experience, again. But also, I was just really nervous, just in general, with, I was having a lot of moments of actually being okay with not having a voice, which was very interesting. After that point, it was almost like I learned, when I didn't have a voice, about being still, and that I wasn't weak without a voice, because just like what you had said before, I had lived for so long that I need to be louder than everyone, to be seen and heard and valued and appreciated. And for the first little while when my voice was gone, I was like, okay, I'm silent, I'm weak, no one can hear me, I'm not capable, like all of these different things. And what I realized is that the silence actually was making me stronger, because I was able to be present with people. I was able to be in tune with myself. I was able to understand people because I was listening better and picking up on body language and cues that I hadn't paid attention to as much to before. But now that's what I focused on all the time. That's how I communicated. And so there was definitely fear about using my voice and hurting it, but also a sense of like, I don't want to go back to being in that space of using my voice so much that I forget what I've learned, that I forget that stillness is beautiful, and to be present with people, and that I don't actually have to say something all of the time. It's okay to be still and to listen and to pause. So there were layers of all of that for sure for me.
Wow. So, man, that's so powerful. And you know, often we try to find the reason, the lesson in things, and sometimes it's not as obvious, but for you to have really been able to really have such a big moment, not one moment, but a big lesson, so to speak, growth opportunity. And I have a comparison, but I don't mean it to be trite, because your voice is not the same as my comparison. But I've been without a vehicle for 2 years now, um, and it was kind of similar in that it made me be still, and I wasn't able to just like go run the roads, or I wasn't doing things for people as much because I wasn't able to, I was kind of a go-to for so many that, oh, could you do this for me? Could you, whatever it may be. And I was forced to say no. And it made me realize that the people pleaser that I knew I was, and I had thought that I had come so far from, was still there and still doing her due diligence. And so now, people are like, when are you going to get a car? And that's a complicated question, of course. But then there's a part of me that's like, I'm not really in a hurry. Like, we have a vehicle in the household, and there's Uber and there's Lyft, and I've learned how to ask people for rides, and I've learned how to decide whether it's really worth going to. When I first left Habitat and started coaching full time, I was networking like crazy, trying to shift my brand, because I was kind of the face of Habitat, and I wanted people to know, like, I'm no longer there, I'm doing this. And I think COVID, coupled with the vehicle loss, really created this environment where I just had to sit at home. And there were times where I had FOMO, and I really felt like I was missing out on things. And there were times where I had to reevaluate friendships because things had shifted. And so it's really interesting how things that can feel so tragic actually have such huge blessings for us. And so again, I'm not attempting to compare a car to your voice, but just the very similar, again, another similarity we have. It's wild. Very, very, very cool. Thank you so much for being so vulnerable so far. I mean, you've just really been so open, and it means the world to me. And I'm not going to cry, so I'm going to stop right now.
I echo everything Anne says, and just when you talked about going back to your first love, and I because both Ange and I have dwarfism, and being seen, being heard growing up, that was me in piano. That was my confidence builder. Like, people wouldn't take me seriously until I went to the bench and started playing, and then that's how people knew me. That's how people would be like, oh yeah, she's really good at piano. Oh god, you have to hear her. It wasn't my dwarfism that stood out, it was my music. So I was very, that was my refuge, that was my identity. And thankfully, I was able to find, because with little people, we have shorter fingers, we have trident shaped fingers, but I had a very beautiful, like, just the best teacher who was able to find a solution for me to really encourage and support that journey. So that story of your resonated with me so much. So thank you. Do you mind if we like shifted gears a little bit to talk about the scoliosis?
Yeah.
Yes. Could you like share a little bit about what it is? Because I'm sure there are some viewers who maybe not be familiar with that condition, and how you've been, living with that.
Yes, thank you so much for asking. Scoliosis is where your spine, instead of it being straight, it is curved. There are different forms of scoliosis. So sometimes it's curved like an S shape. So you have a curvature in the upper and lower areas of your back. Sometimes it's more of a C shape. So it will curve only in lower and only in the upper part of your back. But I got diagnosed with scoliosis when I was 14. My back had been hurting for a little bit previous to that. And it's funny, actually, I went into the doctor for a cold, which is not related to it at all. And they checked me for a cold, and then they just did the routine scoliosis checkup where you stand up straight and then you bend over so that they could see, what your spine looks like. And the doctor was just like, oh, wow, has anyone seen you for scoliosis? I didn't know what in the world that meant at that time, other than when you have a doctor say, oh, wow, like for no matter who you are, I'm like, what's going on? I'm like, don't say that. And they immediately got me in to get some x-rays, and I had a very large curvature in my back to the point where they had said, we need to go and get you a back brace, which is my version of a back brace. It's a plastic hard piece. It's a hard piece of plastic that's like a girdle, but it's super not cute. They just strap you into the back. There's 3 straps, and they just really tighten your whole body in hopes that they can straighten your back by having this brace on your body. And so I had to wear that for 22 hours a day for about a year. And I could take it off for 2 hours easily during the night. That was for breathing room, because it would give me scars at times. And also because you have to wear an undershirt typically underneath your back brace. But if it gets sweaty, it's going to bunch up, and then the brace is going to end up giving you like welts and stuff like that. And so I'd get like typically about 2 to 4 hours for a little bit of a break with my brace. For a little while, because during that time I was also going through some trauma within my home and family, the pain was so much, like emotionally, but also physically, it was so much. And so I decided to make the choice that I was not going to wear my brace at night. So I would take it off secretly and try to put it back on in the morning so no one would know that I had taken it off. And unfortunately, I don't know if it's because I didn't wear my brace or whatnot, my curve ended up getting worse. And so when we went back in, a year after the first diagnosis, they said, at this point, it's so bad, you're going to either need to have surgery and have 2 titanium rods put in your back with hooks to hold your spine in place, or you're going to be crippled by 30. So being told that as a 15-year-old kid, you don't really understand what it's going to look like at 30. But I didn't want to have the option of also, you wouldn't have the option of having kids as well. If you didn't have the surgery, it would just be out. And I love kids. Like, I wasn't thinking of kids at 15, but I also didn't want that possibility. I didn't want to not have that possibility. And so, we went in and had surgery. So I'm now the proud owner of 2 titanium rods and 14 hooks in my back. I'm a cyborg. And I'm really grateful for it. It still causes me quite a bit of pain. However, I am walking, and I have 3 beautiful kids, and I am able to do a lot of things that I would not have been able to do if I had not had the surgery. So the pain is actually a reminder most of the time for me when I feel that, of like, okay, I'm here, I'm moving, I'm able to dance and walk and, play with my kids and things like that, I wouldn't have had otherwise. So.
Wow. So, pardon me. Pregnancy is not easy without metal rods in your back. So tell us a little bit about that experience, and not once or twice, but 3 times.
With my specific situation, we didn't know how it would go with my first one, but we learned pretty quickly because of my body, because I'm still tilted. My back is more straight with the rods, but I am still naturally tilted more on my left side. And so as I was carrying my baby, my firstborn, she ended up being breached because she's naturally moving to the curvature of my body. And so it was one of the, I wouldn't say easy questions, but it was, the doctor basically mentioned, when we noticed that she was breached, of like, okay, I don't know if this is a good situation for multiple reasons. We don't want the rods coming through your back, we don't want that. And we also don't want to push too hard on certain spots within your body, because it might give your body trauma and the baby trauma. And so we chose on doing a C-section for my oldest. And then it just naturally, for my second and third, it felt very intuitive that was the same route that we needed to go for both of my other two children, just for my health, for their safety, and for the whole situation.
Do you foresee any future surgeries for you to help manage the scoliosis? And do you have medical professionals, like, have in your conversations with them, in recent years, what do they say about the prognosis of, your condition?
Yeah, that's a great question. There is about, like, I was looking at the statistics and also talked to my doctor about a 40% chance that those who do have scoliosis and have surgery already, that their spine will just still curve, and also that the metal within their back can also over time just wear away. And so the possibility of having another surgery is, it's 40% chance that there's that possibility that will happen, where you'll have to go back in and have that resurgery redone. For me right now, because of, and it's not something that I was told before, so it's interesting, but because of my rods, I have the rods at the top of my backbone all the way to my butt bone. And so what's happening now is the pressure of the rods is actually putting pressure on my neck. And so I'm getting slip disc, my neck bones, the slip disc is crushing now. So that's something that I didn't know beforehand. Apparently it happened. So the possibility of having another surgery, either neck, back, both, there's definitely a higher chance of that for sure.
Is scoliosis hereditary? Is it something that
It is.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
I remember in junior high in gym class, everybody getting the scoliosis test, and nobody really seemed to have signs of it. Well, they always think that we do with dwarfism, but really we have lordosis. I mean, it's obviously possible, but what a gym teacher sees is likely lordosis because of our sway back or kyphosis, or both. But it feels like, I don't know that I've ever known anyone that's had scoliosis, even though it's something that was a topic in junior high. So at what point will it show, or I guess maybe your kids are probably old enough by now that it's either shown or not by now?
Yeah, my oldest actually, 3 years ago, she started forming, her lower back started forming scoliosis.
Oh, wow.
And so we got her in, she began doing physical therapy really early on when we first found it. And so it is, right now, I still check with my kids all the time because it is genetic, but right now, because of the physical therapy, it strengthened her bones enough that her spine went back straight. That's not always the case, but in her case, that did happen, that we did catch it early enough that she was able to strengthen that tissue, those muscles and bones, so that it could go back to a healthy state.
Yeah, that's good to know that, like, it's not just surgery, like there are, things in between. And my sister had to wear a back brace similar to yours. She had scoliosis, but hers was, she had a slew of other things too. And so I completely understand the want to have that break at night. I mean, it's miserable. It digs into your skin, it creates welts, it creates sweating. It can create bed sores in a sense because of the sweating, so I can absolutely understand why you would have done that. And then coupled with household trauma, like, your body stores trauma, right? And so it's definitely understandable for sure. Well, we could obviously continue on forever, and I think that you and I probably could talk all night if we wanted. But we all have ADHD and that ain't happening. So is there anything that we didn't ask or cover that you would like for us to address?
I would love to just leave with remembering that your voice is a gift and your body is a gift, your mind is a gift, and no one gets to have it. It's all yours. That everything is intentional and you're okay to say no, and you're okay to set those healthy boundaries with yourself and really see that, yes, just because you have a voice, just because you have a body and a heart and a mind, you do not have to give them away so freely.
So good. So good. And not only is it all yours, but it comes in so many different ways and in so many different shapes and forms and formats, and it's all yours. It's all yours. Oh, I got goosebumps. I love that so much. Well, Laurie, truly a million thanks for being so open with us and sharing so much, and for being you, because you are truly such a light. The name of your show is perfectly named. How can people follow you, connect with you, buy the book, follow your podcast, hire you to play piano, whatever it may be?
I am mostly found on Facebook and Instagram are kind of my go-to socials under Lauri Schoenfeld. I also have all the shows on the Enlightenment Show on Facebook, as well as a YouTube channel. If you go to the Enlightenment Show on YouTube, all the shows will be up there. And then laurischoenfeld.com is my website. It is not up yet, but it will be soon, which will have the collaboration and collection of all the things there. So
Excellent. Samyuktha, you have anything for our guest as we close out?
No, this was such a wonderful experience having you on the show, Laurie. Like, thank you again, like Angela said, for just being so open and vulnerable, and for, having the courage, to share your powerful, moving story. And I know our viewers will feel the same.
thank you both so much.
Oh, thank you so much.
Yeah.
All right, y'all, everybody, thank you so much for being here. We love all of you, and we hope that you have the most amazing day. Bye.
Take care. Bye, all.